Hi out there. Welcome. Poets, can I just get a quick thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Yes? Okay, perfect. um, so I'm Laura Buccieri, the Director of Publicity at Copper Canyon Press, and I am coming to you live from the Bay Area. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're getting ready for a live book launch reading with James Richardson, Heather McHugh, and Sarah Ruhl. And they're going to read from their gorgeous new and forthcoming books, Here Now, Muddy Matterhorn, and 44 Poems for You, respectively. So this is our final of four launch party live streams in the month of April. And we're still relatively new to Zoom, as so many are right now. So thanks so much for joining us in this little experiment. If those of you watching out there have questions or comments for the poets, you can look for the Q&A feature on Zoom and enter a question. It's down, I think, here in your screen. And we'll get to those at the end if we have time. And if it would help you to see closed captioning, we'll be attempting to live caption this reading in real time. So you'll just need to enable the closed captioning feature on your Zoom window, which is right near the Q&A button. So that's where that is. If you're joining us via the simultaneous live stream on our Facebook page, welcome. And thanks so much for tuning in. Comments or questions on the Facebook stream won't get to us directly here on Zoom, but we'll be doing our best to keep an eye on Facebook at the same time. So as you probably know, Copper Canyon Press is a nonprofit, independent book publisher that's been entirely dedicated to poetry for almost 50 years now. You're tuned into our fourth and final launch party live stream reading. So this is a way for us to stay connected with all of you in this era of social distancing, and to launch these beautiful books since we weren't able to attend AWP. Our authors have had to cancel book tours and other events, and most of the beloved bookstores you all love to shop at have had to close their doors to the public. So speaking of bookstores, when you fall in love with these authors and their books during today's reading, we encourage you to purchase or pre-order their books from an independent bookseller to support them during this crisis. Many independent bookstores have worked out like a way to deliver or ship books to readers even while their doors are shut. So I'm going to rattle off some names of just a few bookstores so you have some ideas of where to shop. So we love our Seattle neighbors at Open Books and the Elliott Bay Book Company. Both are still fulfilling online orders, so we do hope you'll check them out. James Richardson recommended Labyrinth Bookstore in Princeton, which is offering free shipping on online orders, which is really great. Heather McHugh has recommended her local store, Port News and Books in Port Angeles, Washington, which is taking, wow, email, phone, and website orders. That's amazing. And Sarah Ruhl wants to send some love to the store Bookends and Beginnings in Evanston, Illinois. So if you visit coppercanyonpress.org, our website, and navigate to the launch party live stream page, you'll see a long, beautiful list of bookstores recommended by all of our poets with hyperlinks to help you get there. So that's a great resource, which I often turn to, actually. And while we're sharing the love, we just want to say that we're so grateful for the support from our donors, our board of directors, and funders like Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, For Culture and the National Endowment for the Arts, who are providing crucial relief funding to arts organizations like ours, so that we can keep the poetry coming. So if you are moved to make a donation to help Copper Canyon Press keep publishing poetry, you can do so at our website, which again is shockingly coppercanyonpress.org. Thank you so much. So welcome to those of you just joining. This is the Copper Canyon Press launch party live stream. I'm going to stop talking because nobody came to hear me talk. And I will get started kicking things off with our first reader, who is James Richardson. So today we're celebrating James's forthcoming collection, For Now, which will be out in early May. He's been named a finalist for both the National Book Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award. He lives in New Jersey and he teaches at Princeton University. So I will mute myself and pass it off to you, Jim. All right?
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm sure you're there. It'll be kind of weird if you're not, but I'll go on anyway. I thought I'd start with a very short dedicatory poem. The Touch, for Connie. 40 years on, the wine we poured out on the lawn, leaving the party together, reaches the ocean. I guess this is a short poem too, but it's in 6 short sections that get to be kind of long. And I should say in advance that all the stuff about flies is true. I have high standards of scientific accuracy. It's called On the Fly. Though twice I forgot them in that apartment between 2 lives, when I was, well, what was I doing? It is well to consider the flies and their flights, the soft stumble of the moth fly, or the pixel drifting up from a peach so loose it's torn by its stone, or the soot fly, or the evening hover fly, the sweat fly, the deer fly, or the laser flight of the corpse fly, which from miles away hears your breathing, pause, and soon, too soon, homes in. Though mostly it is house flies we notice, taking off backwards, swatters must compensate, as if they'd suddenly remembered something. Magnets, magnets, shrilled my landlady when I got back from weeks of doing what I was doing. She meant, of course, I had forgotten to tie my trash. Maggots. Precise in their prissy, hand-wringing way, flies are by our lights filthy, walking in shit, though light, light on your brow is their 6-fold grip. Some things in a life happen once, but then again, some happen twice. More weeks away, and I strode into my kitchen, wrong, dark at noon. Its one window, inwardly black, flat black with flies. They are necrophiliacs, sure, but shriven in passing through the straight white gate of a fly's egg, maggots, though they turn our stomachs, come out pure as magnets. So much more pointed than a scalpel's is their distinction, cell by cell, of dead from viable flesh, that surgeons defer to their soft mouths to clean wounds. So hard and true it is to leave life carefully behind. This next poem is a page and a half. I wasn't sure whether to call it For the Aliens or For the Children, which should tell you what the basic metaphor is. It's kind of for my children. It's kind of for all my students. It's for anyone younger than me, which these days is almost everyone. And it's called, finally, For the Children. They were unutterably lovely, the aliens, when finally we knew them, when at last we understood they had lived and moved among us from the beginning in bodies the image of ours, those smoother, eyes wider, as if the world were a little darker for them or more wondrous. And we loved them as wildly and deeply and helplessly as our first loves, our dreams, our lost ones, all at once, though we knew they were wilder and deeper than we were, and freer, and loving them only deepened our loneliness. When they gathered on evening corners, faintly luminous, and their murmuring rose in urgency, calling on stars, we feared they would leave us for worlds far, far beyond us, though we dared not ask in their language so eerily ours, will you carry us with you, lest they look away, bored, with our dullness, our burdensome love, our ignorant dying. What could we, after all, with our dim minds, our narrowed sensoria, know of the lightning of their thoughts, the storm of their joys, or their sorrow? For sorrow was theirs. They were lords of sorrow. Why in the world these creatures, immortal and perfect, should be so gloomy and aimless was beyond us. Yet they grew so slowly into the unprecedented lives we had thought they would seize instantly as their right, that it seemed the long, long future brooding over them was so heavy they could hardly bear it forward one little step. And at last they dismissed the fantastic travels faster than light that had landed them only here, and their magic technologies that had taught them, it seemed, what anyone could have told them. And they ceased to gather on corners dreaming of rescuers and glanced, if at all, only sidelong at the stars. Maybe some earthly pathogen had worn them, or the weakness of our yellow sun had left them so wan that even their radiant children could not tell them from us when they sat with us, sipping at coffee a little more patiently now, enduring our sadness, our sad adoration, even our sad relief that life was a little less possible than once we had hoped. Since who else in the vast, small universe still knew that they were as luminous and unutterably lovely as our first loves, our dreams, our lost ones, all at once. So impossible, they were beautiful. So beautiful, they were true. And I'll end with another short one. This is a, a riff on Shakespeare's Sonnet 73, where he compares our lives to the seasons. I taught it about 432 times in my life. That's probably an estimate, and I quote it compulsively. The title of the poem is line 2 of Sonnet 73. When yellow leaves, or none, or few, do hang. If life is a year, then this is November, just about the day I'm thinking it'll never get cold, and it gets cold. If life is a day, then now is the darkening, serious, but not quite deep enough to sleep in. If life is an hour, then I'm near the end of a story I might or might not finish in an hour. But life is a minute, and suddenly looking up from the page, who can tell whether it's the middle or end or beginning of a minute? Thanks.
Thank you so much.
You have thunder, Jim.
I do, yeah. I mean, it was about that.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
It started when you
sound
said
effects,
storm.
That's just, you're just hearing that out of my head,
It's Jovian.
Yeah.
I know the weather was a very good background soundtrack.
Absolutely.
This is very cool. James, as you were reading, I was going through the Q&As and I just found one that's very sweet, and it says, "No question, just a few gasps and a wow." So that's very, very sweet, I thought.
That is very sweet. Thanks.
I love that. And I also found myself wondering, you have this gorgeous plant hanging behind you as you're reading. Is this something that you take care of and tend to, or is this a plant that can almost survive on its own with minimal attention?
Both of those things would have to be true.
There you go. Trick question, you pass.
Yeah, it's a philodendron and it's unkillable. I got it at the grocery store about 15 years ago, and it just keeps. And if I can't kill it, no one can.
I need to get one then. Well, thank you so much, James. I am going to move us along to our next reader, who is Heather McHugh. Heather will be reading from her forthcoming collection, Muddy Matterhorn, which officially publishes on May 1st, which is next week. That's wow. She is the recipient of a MacArthur Fellowship, Griffin International Poetry Prize, and has been a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. Heather lives in the Pacific Northwest, and that is where she's coming to us today from. That was not a sentence. Why am I still talking? I will leave it to you, Heather, to wordsmith for the next 15 or 20 minutes.
I always like prepositions at the ends of sentences myself.
You're too kind.
To defy Sister Cletus. Hi, all you visible and invisible folks there. How lucky are we to get to hear these two, Richardson and Ruhl? They almost need an ampersand. It's like some kind of rare legal team. And my theory is it's cardiac jurisprudence or something, but if poetry does, as Novalis says, repair the wounds inflicted by reason, then R&R are the ones who stand at reason's side with the first aid kit. And it's a bag with damn good stuff inside it too, as you two are hearing now. For my taste, adages always smelled like used bandages, and old saws were only intended to disarm us. So these guys bring us seriously salutary measures for our born to be torn up natures, is why I love them. Balms of smiles and smarts, some jars of spark and spunk, a philosophical CPR or two, and all the single malt spikes an EKG could want. So thank you both for being, not just being there. I love reading you. And thank you folks at Copper Canyon too. Best I can do out here in the sticks is ferment a few eyes from a potato and see what we get. I dug a few things up. I think they're fit to share, but don't expect to find them anywhere verbatim, because after 40 years of hard bifocal teaching, I found out you can't tire once, you must retire. And that's when you find out your working motto. In my case, it's vision will not last without revision. And you can mess with words as long as you mean them. Galactic politics, because a nation can't contain itself. Are we not old enough to stop our blustering? Can we not call it quits? Or must we keep on whipping every starfield redder with our stripes? Our adolescence surely should have ended back in year 2008, if not in 92 or 67. Instead, we tromped all over, branding lands and animals alike. Hell, not even heaven, where we wave our colors, seems to set us right. Though on our planet's trademarked moon, the sun gods made the flags we planted all turn white. The ones I picked are all either doggerel or based on little factoids that I ran across in strange places. That's why this one's called Picked Up at a Three-Way Intersection. The etymology of trivia is the place where people collected to gossip. So I'm continuing the tradition here. When he was just a kid in Edinburgh, A. Graham Bell contrived a talking doll. The doll said, "Mama." Later, he would never telephone his mother or his wife. The reason's not the one you fear. The women both were deaf. Some facts can make a grown-up weep real tears. The Himalayan is the largest of the honeybees. On highest overhangs of cliff, it makes a honey brimming with hallucinogens. It's we who trip, of course. Of their imaginations, we are ignorant. Do geese see God? The dog god asked. And boom, the question and the questioner were perfect palindromes. Antarctic glacier ice is known to test as high as 3% for penguin piss. Within an average human lifetime, you produce saliva of a quantity to fill 2 good-sized, if completely uninviting, swimming pools. Did you know oysters change their genders as they will? It's not that they are exhibitionists. No, no, no. At these slow dances, they are only out to multiply their chances. No sooner has he lost a battle than an ape inclines to masturbate. In this, as in much else, he quite resembles human men. Our women, on the other hand, prefer to jack off when they win. Dredging earnestly for clams just off the coast of Iceland, climate change researchers checking age and health to see how global warming was affecting mollusks first froze and then dissected several hundred specimens, which now could qualify as dead. Among the gathered clams, they found this one whose shell rings placed its birth at 500 to 700 years before. In other words, they learned they'd killed the oldest animal on Earth. Perhaps for all these reasons, if in formicultural domains a reasoning endeavors to exist, no ant can sleep. No ant is sleeping ever. Humans are heartbreaking. I find humans heartbreaking, but that's because I let them get my heart, I think. Here's a case in point. En point. Jean-Baptiste Lully, to whom this poem is dedicated, he was the inventor of the conductor's baton, died in 1687 of gangrene after stabbing himself with his invention in the toe during the Te Deum. Stick. Writ large, your knack for instrumental lilt became the squinting orchestra's anointer. From futures in the lands of Vanderbilt, we owe you very dearly for the pointer. The bloom of cultivation as we know it requires we sling some mud above our root. Conducting every calling into air, you aimed for higher places and you put the emphasis on eye instead of ear. High-handedness is what the mass holds dear, but poets love your sacrificial foot. I'm sorry, I was born of a barroom punster and a woman who never finished her English degrees, and this is what happens. 2 widows making a bed might be preferable. 2 widows making a bed. This one isn't in the book, but I'm trying it out on you guinea pigs. it's really meant for all those husbands I referred to earlier, and not the prospective one I'm with now. Look at this, what a wonder to find it by accident under the covers and out of its box. It's equipped for some duty to judge by its crankshaft. The structure's a beauty, I bet that it walks. Turn it on, can you find any switch for ignition? They haven't designed many I'd like to keep. It should rise, it should shine, it should take a position, not kill our ambition or put us to sleep. It could stoop, it could stand, it has spin, it has spyware. Its handles aren't mangled, so why does it lie there? With stir stick and fur trick, a can that's a zinger, could it be something human? It won't lift a finger. It's ruthlessly useless. That paltry display will not come to its senses, but won't go away. It's enragingly loath to engage on demand. It's a certainly perfectly functional man. You gotta understand, I love men. It's not, also my email address is nomenclator, which is constantly misunderstood for some man-hating handle, but is not, I assure you. Nobody knows nomenclature anymore. Sister Cletus did not ruler anybody else's hand, apparently, in this era. And I'm gonna end with an equally unholy offering, which I read at the wedding of some friends recently. One is a laid back musician and one is a high energy artisan. And this is the blessing I would confer on all such unions. The wisest matchmaker would bring each even-tempered country boy to meet such urban girl combustibility. He'd sing his heart out at the sight. She'd greet his gaze without embarrassment. She'd feather him in feelings past the norm and bid him raise the ever-moving music of his tent inside the quilted comforts of her dorm. But cautions recommended for the groom: from marriage's array of roost and thigh, oh rooster, after reveries of swoon, be careful not to cast a roving eye. A peaceful farm can turn embattled ghetto when chicks command an army in a glance. If on the road you would not sing falsetto, you better keep your pecker in your pants. So there, is that high class enough yet? Happy, by the way, Happy Earth Day. Cela est bien dit, répondit Candide, mais il faut cultiver nos jardins. Notre jardin. I think he has it in the singular. It's all very well, you know, it's all very well put, but we have to go take care of our gardens. Thank you guys for being here, and especially you there, the ones I can see who make this possible and give me a chance to enjoy myself. I'm shutting up now, I'm turning off my mic.
Oh, wow. Heather, thank you so much. I've been combing through these comments and they're all just so great. They make me smile as much as you just made me smile. Somebody said, I hope someone captured her intro, and I agree with that. I would love a transcript of your intro. That was beautiful. And somebody else said, your words have always spoken to my soul. Thank you. Your wit and wordplay, even in conversation, is a delight. Okay, I'll stop now, but I agree with both of these comments. So thank you so much, Heather. That was great. Our last reader is Sarah Ruhl. Sarah will be reading from her debut poetry collection, 44 Poems from You. For you, sorry. She is a MacArthur Genius Award recipient, 2-time Pulitzer Prize finalist, and a Tony Award nominee. In addition to her acclaim as a playwright, the poetry community may know her for her beautiful book with Max Ritvo, Letters from Max. Sarah is coming to us from Rhode Island today, but you're usually in New York City. So I figured I'd throw that out there. Sarah, I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting this. And it's such an honor to read with these two. And My God, Heather, you speak in iambic pentameter. It's astonishing. I was so moved by both of you. It's such a balm to hear your words right now. All right, I'm going to read a couple poems, and I guess I can show you this book that I love the design of so much that Copper Canyon created. And since you mentioned that I'm in Rhode Island, I figured I'd read a Rhode Island poem first. I guess I'm a fugitive Rhode Islander right now from New York, but the National Guard was very friendly. And we did live here for 7 years, so I feel like we still have our license plates, even though it would be a felony to put them on at this point. This is called Summer, Rhode Island, and it's for my husband, Tony. I should mention that all of the poems in this collection are poems of address. Summer, Rhode Island. You know what a lee is, I don't. Behind a stone, no wind, stop boat, a place. Behind your back, my body, stop the air. Travel by stopping, full stop, just there. As lee is the small word, sail easy. Lee and unlee, light is hot. Rest here a while longer on my belly. A lee, a dry dairy, a drought. August, marsh sounds, marsh looks, a fairy. Look for other words, lucid, pellucid. Call a mind a pond, call a pond a mind. Lucid, penitent mendicants on a pond. Words for clarity, words for light and heat. Words for charity, words for sleep. This next poem is dedicated to all the weary mothers I know right now in quarantine, specifically dedicated to single mothers who are full of worry about things like where to do their laundry in New York City. And this is dedicated to my friend Sherry Mason, who also happens to be a brilliant fiction writer. And am I speaking too quietly, Laura? It's hard to tell. Okay.
No, you're really good.
Okay. So poem for weary mothers for Sherry Mason. What you don't imagine when you're pregnant, the fevers, the falls, the nights without end, how worry will become a placeholder for thought. Pink medicine and nebulizers and the fight to put on socks, cough drops buried in your purse along with forgotten cheese. How worry will become a kind of companion, like another heart or lung, and how nothing will ever smell as good as your boy's hair when sunlight hits it. Of course, I was just screaming at my boy to stop throwing the ball against the wall while I was reading. So they're all underfoot, as is the dog. So I'm on Tinder hook, sort of waiting for someone to appear. This poem I wrote before the quarantine, obviously, but it reminds me of how we're all in our homes attending to the ordinary and the objects in our lives in a different kind of way. It's called I Wanted Music. I wanted music, yes, but I also wanted the music of everyday things. A plate, an arm, some dirt, a chair. How a plant is related to a window. How a window is related to a chair. Small words with purpose. Correspondences of everyday things. The music of combustible objects. One day ending, not tracking for posterity, but loosening like a fig. This next poem again is for my husband, and I'm finding during quarantine I'm even more grateful for his company than I already was. I keep waking up in the night, sort of not knowing where I am, and it's a great comfort to find him there. This is called Twin Hip Bones. Twin hip bones, twin prime numbers. A day will not always look like this. You in the evening and you in the morning. My hip bone curving, your hip bone curving toward mine. A day will not always look like this. You in the evening and you in the morning. Someone please describe to me the beauty of asymmetry. One hip bone, one number, one branch. A day will not always look like this. you for beginnings and endings, and for between the long yellow night.
Hey, Sarah,
Yeah,
can you increase your volume a tiny bit? I'm just reading. One person
can't
said it
hear.
might be a tiny bit too quiet.
Is it just my regular volume, or is there a special volume on Zoom?
Just sure, I think just getting closer.
Maybe I could talk louder.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's the non-tech fix. Just talk
Exactly.
louder.
I'm going to talk louder, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Just going to read two more poems. No, thank you. Um, this is a prayer about the slowness of time, and it seemed appropriate for this slow time we find ourselves in and giving over to it. Prayer. Let the day open slow around you. Let the night open slow around you. Let the spring open slow, the fall open slow, the waking animals open slow around you. Let the night close slow around you. Let the day close slow around you. The winter close slow, the summer close slow, the sleeping animals close slow around you. Now I'm getting your rain now from Princeton. Um, this last one I'm going to read is for Max Ritvo. Laura mentioned I collaborated on a books with Max. He is a brilliant poet, and he was a former student of mine. And if you're buying books today, please look for his book, Final Voicemails or Four Reincarnations. I also wanted to read this poem because it's about Max doing a poetry reading. And Max was an ebullient reader, not retiring and quiet like I am. Max had a booming voice and would fill up the whole room. And sort of in memory of that, and also in hope for the future, where we're actually in rooms together again doing poetry readings. This is for Max in memory of a poetry reading he did at 13th Street Rep in New York. It's called "This is an Automated Recording from a Hospital Near You." An x-ray of your soul shows a general radiance, while the scan of your breath shows only poetry. We are still waiting on the biopsy of your imagination, but we suspect it cannot be contained. Your body cannot contain you. You're way too wide for that. And if there is a Jewish heaven, it is here on earth, on 13th Street, you shouting poetry in a crowded room, circling and wearing a pink kimono. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much. I love that line, how I think it was how worry will become another companion. Forgive me if I didn't quote it correctly, but I love that so much. Poets. So let's see, we have about 20 minutes left of this virtual space. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to answer some questions from our audience members. Are you guys thumbs up if you're okay with that? Yeah? Okay.
Depends.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have written in with questions for all three of you, but I will start with a question that's actually just for you, Sarah, if that's okay, and then I can throw it to everybody after that. I don't know, perhaps you get this question a lot, Sarah. I don't know. I don't think I've asked you this, so I would like to know the answer as well to this question. What was the transition from playwriting to poetry like? That's from one of our audience members, and I guess you can speak to that as you'd like.
I mean, in a funny way, it's a circle because I started out writing poetry and then started writing plays, but I never actually stopped writing poetry. I was just much more secretive about it and squirreled it into my desk drawer, or I squirreled it into my plays. So it was more about being brave enough to publish the poems as poems than it was about starting to write them. I kept writing a lot of poetry as kind of gift poems or poems of occasion or address. And I always did that as a practice. And I think Poetry and playwriting actually has a good deal in common because they are about the voice. I actually think poetry and playwriting have more in common than poetry and short story writing because it's about actually an embodied voice and an oral tradition. And there's a lot of silence in a poem where you imagine the world of the poem. There's a lot of white space on the page, and in a play too, there's all of that white space for alchemy to happen, but it becomes three-dimensional in a play rather than in the reader's imagination.
Oh, wow. That you absolutely had an answer for that. That's a beautiful answer. I like that you've never stopped writing poetry. I like that it's not even you've just been, I like thinking of you squirreling them away. And then I like thinking of them out in the world now in this collection. So that's great. Thank you, Sarah. I now have a question for all three of you. So somebody is wondering, has anything altered your language or your approach to language recently? Which I think is I guess it's a yes or no question. So I might rephrase it and say, what, if anything, has altered your language or your approach to language recently? Heather, you're kind of nodding.
Yeah, as it is a little on my mind right now because I was always a very paged poet. I love the architecture of poems. I do lineated poems, and Sarah, properly by my lights, emphasizes the white space. That was always as important to me as the blackened space, which in the sense that I screwed up those parts and at least I left part of the world alone. And I like I love working with the architecture of it, always have. It's a visual art for me. But I discover increasingly now, maybe partly because I have to work in these media more and more, that the half that was the musical art is getting the upper hand. It's partly that I feel a little offhand about poems right now, not having done them for about 10 years. There was a big silence in my life. And I don't want to make any great claims for them. I feel before they were always talking to the dead, which is not to say they needed to be stentorian since the dead can't hear anyway, but that's in some ways always the real audience for me when the poems were on the page. Now I'm much more aware of singing with people and being forgivable. Maybe it's a self-indulgence to think so, but I feel I forgive myself more maybe and permit myself latitudes of song I wouldn't before, or that would have embarrassed me, the limericky latitudes of the poetic universe, which were really my father's first love. I flee them less now that I too am going to be dead soon. So what it all means, I don't know, but I think it's affected the language. I really love the character of American lingos, and I love slinging those lingos around. Always have, but feel I get to do it with more freedom now, maybe.
Oh, that's beautiful, Heather. I really do hope we're capturing all of these comments by all of you because they're just as beautiful as the poems to me.
Well, these guys are a joy to. I really feel lucky to get to read with you guys because I know Sarah's work much more recently, but I've long loved James's, and it's a delight and an inspiration actually to hear you. I always forget how much the voicings do matter, and how much I do love that. I was cocky about readings all those years. I was stuck in my books and closed in pages, but you guys remind me of the heart that comes with the heard voice.
Well, I've heard you lots, and I always love hearing you. The last time you came to Princeton, you were doing you had that algorithm that changed passages into
Oh,
other words, but every time I hear you, it's something completely different and wonderful and crazy. You know?
I'm obsessed now with randomized language. I sort of love that. A friend who has a disabled child, actually all the friends I have that have disabled children, the abilities of those children are the amazing thing. And anyway, she said he has a language randomizing thing now, some kind of tool that I crave. So there you go. More addictions.
Wow. James or Sarah, do either of you want to speak to kind of, has anything altered your language or approach to language recently, or shall we move on?
I could say something.
Yeah, please.
Always start answers to questions with "I don't know," but
A wise man.
Or other people would be more aware of that than I would. Yeah, I feel like it's not one language that one uses, that one has different genres. So to me, it's not like, oh, something changed my language in the past 5 years. It's just that I keep moving among slightly different languages to write a very tiny metrical half-rhymed lyric poem versus that, say, that kind of high-flown one that I read about children and aliens, to aphorisms, which I didn't read any of them. And they're all me. I can't tell. They may sound all the same to anyone else, but to me, I feel like I'm slipping into a slightly different language, and there are words that belong in some of those genres that don't belong in others.
Oh, that's fascinating. I've never thought of words belonging in one genre or another. That's all right. That's a question in and of itself.
It's interesting, James, that whole thing of you and Sarah, I'm curious if you had this experience of finding out after all your life thinking each new poem was addressing a whole new topic in the world, having someone come to you and saying you have a style, or being told that you have a voice that they recognize, but you always thought it was your transparent way of accessing the world. And yeah, I guess it's sort of like our slouch, or the things we don't see about ourselves, or that we wear without being able to see. It's one of the great virtues of being in a body that you can't see most of it yourself, but other people have to. Yeah. It's the same is true in a way of one's own poetic voice. Right. I think you hinted at that.
It's just a basic fact of personhood, right? Other people always seem more distinct than we do. We think we're changing inside all the time, but when someone like, oh, you're the same person, you know.
Damn.
Yeah, that's it, right?
Here I thought I had fixed myself.
Oh, no. Love the story about Van Gogh, where people thought, oh, how did he get that strange painting style where he saw things as orbs? And, you know, was he self-consciously manipulating his style? And actually, it turns out that's how his eyes saw light. He had a kind of peculiar disorder of the eye, and that's how he saw light. And I think that's how we are in terms of language, too. And I'm gonna put myself on mute because my daughter's playing the violin in the next room. So.
Oh, don't. Oh, she may not want us to hear her, but we want to hear.
All right. We've had thunder. A violin might be better.
Yeah. Or a good accompaniment.
Yeah, Sarah, I really can't hear it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not audible.
But I am curious, like that's interesting, Heather, what you bring up about kind of, or James, both of you speaking to your voice being recognizable in your voice. Sarah, do you find that has anybody made that connection for like your poetry and your plays? Like, do you find that people are recognizing your voice like throughout the different genres?
I don't know. I mean, if they did, I applaud them. But I try not to analyze voice too much for myself, or when I'm teaching students and they get concerned about, do I have one? Do I not have one? I think of it almost like tickling yourself, that it's very hard. Other people can tickle you, but you can't physically tickle yourself and make yourself laugh. And if you're sort of going around looking for your voice, you won't find it. The same way, if you go around tickling yourself, you won't make yourself laugh.
That's phenomenal. I love that. I've never heard that.
Also, other people can hurt you quicker than you can hurt yourself. Like, there's a certain element of the unexpected that participates in both of those disparities.
Yeah. And their criticism works much better than your self-criticism.
Yeah. But it's less thoroughgoing.
Yeah. Right. It's much more incidental.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I have another question that could be for any of you, anybody who wants to answer, but someone is wondering what drove your choices for poems today. Did reading, like via Zoom or anything like that, influence what you chose to read or anything like that?
Good question.
I was definitely thinking about what's been going through my head during the time of self-isolation. So it wasn't so much about Zoom as it was thinking about poems that had a slowness of time, or love poems feel like a nice thing to return to at the moment. I mean, my children make fun of me and say, you only write about death and love. And I say, well, what else?
What else is there?
But I'm curious to hear from both of you how you chose to read what you read today.
I've heard a lot of sacramental stuff lately, and I think I had to do a kind of inoculation of the other kind or something. The only other Zoom reading I've ever done, equally dreaded. I really dread the medium, I got to tell you. And the last time, I think it maybe showed even more, but I chose to read a quite sober, appropriate poem for the era, and it magnified everything. It was like more Corona, you know. It's like, do I have to? So this time I thought, damn it, I'm going to try the other diabolical side of me and see if I can cut some of the syrup of the sacrilege of my own otherwise what is my knee-jerk response, of course, to sorrows, which is to get way, way, way more unctuous, you know, than I should. James, what did you think it over, or did you go by what weird muse guided you?
I was thinking a little bit about variety. I wanted some short and some long, because this book is weirdly divided between very, very short things, as short as one line, and rather longer things. So partly that, and partly it was a function of practicalness and terror. I didn't. I read a couple of poems that I had recorded before, because I knew the reading would be in my head, and if I got terrified, I could do autopilot, and it would be probably all right.
It's very good for other people to know that we too are terrified. I think that helps.
They could probably tell from our work, right?
Yeah. All right. Oh, I forgot. It's not just death and love.
Yeah, they actually read
terror at both of them. Right. It would be so much fun to have conversations with you guys like this. You know, once a month, I'd like to get around that sort of Zoom fireside. A friend of mine, by the way, Christopher Frizzell in Seattle, I think it's under the Stranger Slog, is doing fireside silent readings. And this silent readings he invents, they're such a blessing, actually, for those of us who've had to go to too many other kinds of poetry readings. Everybody sits around with a book and a drink of their choice. And Christopher feeds a guy playing a grand piano in, and they used to hold him in the Sorrento Hotel before COVID, and now he does it online. I mean, it's amazing how inventive people are getting with the medium in response to this.
Yeah. I feel as though we have time for one more question, so I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah.
Because I'm selfishly very interested in the answers in the answer to this question. So I'm gonna ask it. Have you, any of you, ever taken a break from writing, and how were you able to get back into it? If you did take a break. So I'm just curious. I don't know if any of you three want to answer this question, but it seemed very interesting to me.
Mhm. I mean, I'm curious about what Heather said about her 10-year silence.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I had a sort of biological slowdown in writing or change in writing after I had twins. I'd sort of figured out how to write after I had one child, and then after having twins, I was really upended and couldn't write plays for a while. Couldn't write in long form, and so I guess I secretly was writing the whole time because I would write these micro essays to see if I could remember a thought in the evening that I'd had all day, and then I would scribble it down. So I guess I was writing, but the way I wrote changed. But if you looked at the plays, there might be a 2 or 3 year gap after I had those babies.
Yeah, it's interesting what the world see. You know, they see that gap as like, oh, you haven't had a play for 3 years or something like that, but they don't necessarily see all the work that's happening in those like rest or whatever non-writing periods, which contain so much writing.
I love the idea of a rest and attending to a rest. And I think it's very American to think you just, you know, have to constantly be shouting into the void and be productive.
It's
But,
a fermata in music, kind of staying or holding place, or, I mean, in which things don't hold still, of course. They keep streaming past. Life does its streams. It had a live stream even before Zoom. Yeah, I had that 10-year period. I partly attribute it to the MacArthur. I don't know if this happened to you, Sarah, but it both freed me to do something that I would never have done otherwise, which for a while, about a 6-year period or 6 or 7 years, I worked to make a nonprofit that gave respite to the caregivers of family members who couldn't take care of themselves. And those caregivers I felt were the invisible, were a whole social group of the invisible who were doing something that supported the whole society, because they were, you know, they were taking care of someone at home and not asking everybody else to do the supporting. And I learned so much during that period. My instincts just took me there, and I don't regret a second of it, but I didn't write almost at all during that time. As I say, I don't regret it. I feel a little, it won't have shown in the reading today, but I feel a little less glib about writing. And I think the great danger for me is a kind of glibness, or a kind of, that the music is so perpetual in me that it, you know, it sort of froths or bubbles over. And that's, of course, also readable as a want of discipline, and I'm really interested in discipline and the controls on it all in the best sense. So I don't know that I will have been changed by it. Maybe I've only been made less sophisticated by a want of practice, but I was practicing something else. And I've lived in academia all these years, and it's easy to become so immersed in that setting that you forget all the other settings, each of which has a prolix vocabulary in one sense or another, whether it's actually verbal, and a range of knowledges and temperaments, and even musical temperaments. And I've loved the freedom it gave me to take a break from all that and study a few other things. But I could not come back.
Yeah. James, do you want to, you're nodding, so you might want to answer.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I've never had a really big break. Maybe that's because I've never had a MacArthur.
Aw.
I think there's a natural break that happens after every project, after whatever you're working on, that great nebula of stuff finally condenses into stars. And then there's a period after that where if you start a poem, you realize quickly that it's something you've already written before, and you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't write that one. I feel like it's only good to write when you really know that you want to write. And if you feel that way, then you want to be a writer, you have to be pretty good at knowing how to make yourself want to write. But I'm pretty easy on myself in the year or two after a book, and I try to read, do new things with the sense of this doesn't have to go anywhere. I will just drift, and it'll come back. You know, it wants to come back because it's fun, which is the only reason to do it. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's fun. I love
I mean, wow, how could you do it for 50 years if it weren't fun? You know, it's not like you're getting money for it every day or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge because one can't help coming back to it if you write for the reasons you should. There's no other reason, as you say. But also one keeps having to propose to oneself that one put oneself in danger. Otherwise, it's so easy for me to fall back into certain kinds of language play and so forth. And I also have to push back against my comforts and my sense of fun. And also, by the way, Jim, after the MacArthur, I was quite afraid of snipers. Tell you, in all kinds of senses, literal and not. I mean, like they came to take some film of me, and I chose a place to get film that could not be triangulated from to.
Yeah, a lot of MacArthur fellows don't make it through that 5 years, and they
Gosh. Well, I'm glad that you are all safe in here.
Survived. Yeah, in order to face this.
And I think we've run out of time now, so I will pause on the questions. Not pause, I will stop on the questions. And I will just say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and coming together across time zones and geography in the name of poetry.
Thanks, it's good to see everyone.
Yeah, wonderful. I had a lot more fun than I expected.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to Anne and Elena back there too, thank you for what you were doing.
Well, if anybody on the interwebs, you can find much more info about these three authors and their books and the mission of Copper Canyon, all that good stuff at coppercanyonpress.org. And you can also find info about how to donate or buy books to help us keep going. So we hope you all stay well and safe out there. And we're just so grateful to you and for you. We're sending love and to you and yours, I guess. And I just wish you well and take care. I will sign off now.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye.
I keep wanting to zoom in on Jim's bookcase. Everybody online now has bookcases behind them, and all I want to know is what books are there, like which ones?
It's mostly papers. For me, bookcases are about the horizontalization of memory. Don't let anything get under anything else because you forget it. Just have it everything.
That's wonderful. Perfect place to go.
Well, thank you all.
It's really nice meeting you, Sarah, too.
Bye-bye. Yes, great to meet you, Sarah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.